A lot of fun. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back. Right on time. Raven Mundy's with us. Hey, welcome back, everybody. I don't know if you can tell, but I got a big old smile on my face. You'll see it in a second. Because as we was getting started, I was listening to the music, and I was like, "Oh, you know what? I'm excited for this." So hopefully, we can have some great conversation, some great debate. Um, and you know what? As I was starting the show, I thought about a conversation that me and Kevin had a little while ago, and we share a similarity in terms of our backgrounds. Like we both grew up in household where debate was what you saw. Like, I used to watch my grandmother, my grandfather, they'd be arguing about politics. They used to argue about which was the fastest route from downtown Cincinnati to get to the suburbs, 71 or 75. I mean, they used to debate all kinds of stuff. They watch 60 Minutes and we'd be arguing. I'd be watching them arguing because I was a little guy. You don't want to get involved because you love everybody, right? And they would be mad. I remember my grandmother just that old fool. When they get older, they make this little face, that old do all that kind of stuff because they don't have no teeth. Old school black people from the South. But it was all love. They weren't going anywhere. But then Kevin, he said he had a similar background as well. So that's the spirit in which we do the show. So yes, it gets heated, it gets emotional. We real people.
Nathan, one clarification.
Okay,
You
just
said you
like
had a big
family interrupting. You go right ahead.
you said you had a big smile on your face. When I heard that, I thought, was there some kind of leftist takeover or something? I mean,
There you go.
what
You
led
bet.
to that? I'm just curious.
Yeah, that would be the best thing that could happen for us right now. Actually.
Sorry, I interrupted you.
Yeah,
Continue.
a
I'm
leftist
sorry.
takeover. But that's it. That's the spirit in which. So yes, it's gonna get heated and all that kind of stuff, and we all believe we believe. But just like your family, your friends, I'm sure y'all go at it too. It's the same thing. So all opinions are valued. You may take some heat, but they are all valued. And at the end of the day, it's just opinions, and we just gonna have to talk our way through what happens next. But having said all that, Phil, good afternoon. Good to see you, Phil Heimlich, and Raven Mundy. Good to see you, Tarris Horton. Good to see you, bro. And of course, Kevin Aldridge, the voice of reason. And we need a voice of reason in these crazy times that we live in. Very crazy times. I mean, really, we could talk about one topic, and we've done this for a whole show. Actually, it's just so much stuff going on, but I did send you a list. We'll get into it. I got to break the list just a little bit because there's so many things that are happening that, sometimes just getting a reaction that's unprepared for could make for some good conversation as well. But
Might I at some point bring up the editorial by former Senator Rob Portman in the Inquirer that I just read? At some point, I think that should be addressed.
yeah, we could start there. Sounds like a natural segue to me. I mean, I'm cool with it. We may not be all well versed on it, but Rob Portman, former senator, Republican, people thought that he was a voice of reason inside the Republican Party, but it looks like a lot of people were left very disappointed. Very disappointed. He wrote. I guess he heard this, so he wrote an op-ed in the Inquirer in which he kind of made his case.
Now, he was responding to an op-ed or a letter from about a week ago, right, Kevin, of somebody who was his constituent who was saying, I was a big supporter of Rob Portman, but I'm just was totally disappointed because of his refusal to stand up to Trump. That was basically what he was responding to.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, people have different opinions. I mean, some people like myself might think it was a letdown. Some people felt like, hey, go Trump. That's just the world we live in. So, I get it. I thought it was interesting that he wrote the piece. Like I said, like a lot of good stuff happens with the Inquirer in terms of just what's happening in the ecosystem of the opinion. I know, Kevin, just talking with you a little bit, I'm sure this is not by coincidence, right? But there's a really interesting ecosystem like of different balance of voices. So, I mean, a lot of them are local. If you're into that kind of stuff, I would tell you to check it out because you'll get some different opinions.
Yeah, I mean that's the whole goal of what we try to do with the section is to put as many diverse voices and points of view. I mean, look, sometimes I have to edit and read some things that I completely and entirely disagree with that actually infuriate me as I'm reading them and editing them. But it's not about whether I agree with the positions or not. It's about the community conversation. And so with the Rob Portman piece, I think it's interesting. I think it's interesting how he sees himself and how he conducted himself during that time and how other people see him. I think, prior to the Trump years, whether you were a Republican or a Democrat, you kind of regarded Rob Portman. Yeah, he was a Republican who was all about the party and a good soldier for the Republican Party. That's been his MO throughout his career. But he was one of the Republicans who was sort of considered to be bipartisan, would cross over in the aisles. He was a reasonable guy, likable guy in Congress, maybe one of the few good guys who were left in Congress at the time. And I think for people like me and maybe Phil and like the gentleman who wrote the column on Rob Portman, I think a lot of people were disappointed because you looked at him to sort of be that sane voice when you could see that the party was kind of clearly going in one direction. And I think from Portman's perspective, he was like, hey, I did say, people should accept the election results. Hey, I did say after the attack on the Capitol that it was deplorable and Trump didn't act soon enough. All of those things are true, but one, it took him far too long. While he was one of the few Republicans who did it, it took him far too long to come out and accept the election results. And though he did condemn Trump for his response to the January 6th attacks, he ultimately voted not to impeach him. So I think a lot of folks, felt let down by that. Me, myself included. I don't consider myself a Republican or a conservative by any stretch of the imagination, but Rob Portman was one of those few Republicans that I might have said, hey, if I had to cast a vote for a Republican, he would be one I would feel okay in doing it for. And I think it felt like a friend. This is how I thought about it. What Rob Portman did by not standing up to Trump sort of felt like, how it is like when you got a bestie or a good friend and you're not around and other people are just dogging you, but your best friend is right there and you expecting that person to stand in for you and stand up, and you find out that they didn't, that they stood by while other people was just dogging you behind your back. Like that's what it felt like with Rob Portman during the Trump years. I think like a lot of people thought Portman was going to be that guy to stand up, and he didn't. And that's the sense of disappointment I think some people felt. He clearly doesn't see it that way, though. He sees himself as having stood up and stood for the Constitution. And, hey.
What do you think, Phil? You're a Republican. Your party.
Well, I have a friend who used to say that excuses are like a particular body part. Everyone has one and they all stink. And I would say that his excuses are pretty lame. And I always preface anything I say about the guy by saying he was very helpful to me when I was running for city council and other offices, and was very kind. And when my father passed away, sent a flag to the ceremony that was hung over the Capitol. So I don't want to sound like I'm, shall we say, ungrateful. But it's interesting. Since he has been out of office, he has not spoken out against the pardons of those 1,500 thugs. He hasn't spoken out against the $200 million plane that Trump got, or the fact that Trump has gone from one capital over the world to another where he has major business interests to essentially promote. Hasn't spoken out against that. The only thing he chooses to speak out against is when somebody with very good reasons criticizes him. So obviously he's more concerned, as he was in office, for his reputation than about standing up for what's right. And as Kevin mentioned, yeah, technically he spoke out against the January 6th. Technically, he said the 2020 election wasn't rigged, but kind of reminds me, it would be as if you go back to the civil rights era, if at the Birmingham demonstrations, if Martin Luther King was quoted as saying, "I support the demonstrators," but he didn't do anything. Okay, he wouldn't, as if he didn't do anything. Well, that's kind of the same thing here. Anybody can just make a statement and then kind of just, oh, I'm on the record saying that. But that's different from leading. He didn't. That's different from what Liz Cheney did and Adam Kinzinger and maybe a few others, okay, where they stood up against just incredibly illegal and unethical actions by Trump. Rob chose to keep quiet. And I've used this expression I got from my mother. She used to talk about the good Germans. The problem is we have too many good Germans in my party.
I mean, Rob Portman, former senator of Ohio. So, yeah, my thoughts are that perhaps Rob Portman never was what we thought he was. You know,
I
you
think
know,
what I understand about maybe not all, but most politicians is at some point they have their moment where you truly, it might take years, it might take a few weeks, it might take a few months, but every politician has the opportunity to really show who they are and what they stand for. And unfortunately, Rob Portman, over the last, few years with the Trump administration and January 6th and all things that have occurred, he finally showed his true colors, and we finally see like what it really is with Rob Portman. At the end of the day, he's going to stand behind whatever most um aids him in whatever he seeks for himself, which is to maintain his political career. And it's unfortunate, but it's standard for most politicians. Like I said, maybe not all, but most. At some point, they have that moment where we finally get to see them for who they truly are. And we, as voters, as citizens, have to make a decision ourselves with how we vote. The next time election time comes around, or the next time we get an opportunity to really look into who we decide to give our vote to. Is that person going to be supported by a Rob Portman? Is that person going to be, affiliated with a Rob Portman? Like, you really have to take those things seriously. It's not just about Rob Portman at this point. It's about anybody who is affiliated to him at this point, who supports him and continues to support him at this point. Is that somebody that you're willing to give your vote to, or willing to lend your support to? Because you know where Rob Portman stands now. There's no denying it. We know exactly who he is. So at this point, it's about thinking in those terms. Now that he's had his kind of come to Jesus moment and we finally understand him for who he is, now we got to think about who is around him, who is been supported by him or supports him, and truly look at who they are and take inventory of the things that they've done and look at them the very same way, and then move forth with that information come election time.
Another curveball, real quick. So you got the Cincinnati election coming up, and I saw that, and I'm not sure if you guys saw this, but Ozzie Davis is posting things about Mika Owens and kind of dredging up some stuff that happened, earlier in the year. And it made me think, as I was reading the comments, there was a lot of people who was like, yeah, we with you, Ozzie, with appearing to say that they're not going to vote for her. This is a complete curveball. But, what do you think about Mika Owens' chances of getting reelected, considering some of her scandals that have sort of upset people in the Black community?
What scandals are you referring to? Just the one where she gave the appointed, I forget the guy's name. Is that
the white guy?
Is that what you call scandal? And is that the only thing
Yeah,
you're talking about?
No, that's one of them. But the other is that it came out that she had some not very flattering things to say about Ozzie Davis when she was considering that process.
Yeah.
And, he ain't letting it go.
Well, it doesn't sound like a scandal. I
Andrew.
mean, don't get me wrong. I don't want to play with words. It doesn't sound like a scandal. It sounds like she took a position
Controversy
that
might
a lot
have
of
been.
people didn't like, but I wouldn't call that a scandal.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, controversy might be
controversy
better.
works. Controversy. I think that's much better. Yeah, point taken. Controversy. So yeah, that works. So what do you think about her chances of getting? Will this impact her chances of getting reelected, in your opinion?
Well, it always has the potential
Absolutely.
it always has the potential to impact her chances. But here's the thing: when you've got as many council seats up, she doesn't have to. You got to remember, Mika Owens was like, I think, number 1 or 2 vote getter.
Yeah.
Last time she ran for election, so she got a lot of votes. You don't have to be the top vote getter. You just ain't got to. You just got to not be the odd man out.
Yeah, you don't want to be 10.
Yeah. So the question is will Mika Owens lose enough support behind those who, remember what she did with Evan Nolan and the things that she said with Ozzie? Is that going to be enough to put her in that position where she's going to be the odd person out in the council elections? I don't know. I mean, I don't know the extent to which, any guess that I would say would be anecdotal. So I would have to admit that, is it possible? Absolutely, it's possible. Is it likely? I don't know. She got a lot of votes, and I think you would have to peel off a considerable number of those votes from her. And is she going to pick up any votes from people who are going to stand by her and support her, who support what she did with Evan Nolan? That's the other side of that. I mean, I get where Ozzy is coming from. If somebody had, had essentially dogged me out like that and threw me under the bus in the process, I probably wouldn't let it go either, if that was me. So I'm not, and Ozzy has a ton of support. I guess the question is how much of Ozzy's support and the support that Mika Owens already had, how much of that does actually crosses over?
I would agree. I think that it's dependent on a number of different things. I do believe that she's definitely lost a pretty good portion, maybe not a majority. That remains to be seen, but I know that she did lose quite a portion of support that she once had. I think she might have underestimated the support that Ozzy had, and continues to have. And I think that it really did put a bad taste in a lot of people's mouths, what the things that she had to say about Ozzy. And I'm not gonna lie, myself included. I did not appreciate some of those comments that were made about Ozzy at all. Just knowing Ozzy, personally, and being around him, some of the things that she said didn't even sound like something that if you had ever even met Ozzy, you would even say about him. So it just was really off-putting to me. And I think that a lot like myself, there are other people who feel that similar way. There are also people who just off the strength of everything that Ozzy has done for the city and for the community of Avondale. I think that, there it's a catch-22. Like, there are a lot of people who I think have kind of withdrawn their support, but like Kevin said, there are also going to be those people who, are going to pick up that slack, because there are people who support Evan, who, he comes kind of with his own, level of support. So those people are going to probably stand behind Mika as well as Evan, because they appreciate her for giving him the opportunity. There are going to be those people who are going to be ride or die for Mika in general, because that's just how they feel. So like Kevin said, I don't think that I don't know for a fact that it's going to be, enough for her to lose her seat, but I do think that the demographic of her support has definitely shifted and changed.
Yeah, I think there could be. I don't wish this. I like Mika Owens, and I think that she can do good work on city council. But I also understand people that might have some issues with some of the stuff that's coming out. And I think that when you take those two things, what my concern would be is that you take those two things and you also add the Hyde Park people, right, who are upset about city council not respecting their wishes. And I think of all the people on city council who are the most vulnerable, number one is going to be Evan Nolan, and then number two, I would have to say her. That sound like sound thinking to you, or?
Yeah, I think in these elections, though, it does come down to numbers. I mean, at the end of the day, and who can churn out their voters. I mean, Cincinnati has a notoriously low voter turnout rate. So everybody that's out there stumping for Ozzy and saying that they hating on Mika ain't gonna vote. I mean, that's not a Kevin Aldridge opinion. That's facts based on voter turnout. So I think if you're looking at that, a lot is going to depend on each of these candidates' ability to get their people out. And I think at last count, there was like 41 people that were running for council or something like that. Now, they may not all wind up running at the end of the day. I don't know. Maybe it's not that many. Maybe it's in the 20s or something like that. But long story short, there are a lot of people that's running for council. So that in and of itself dilutes the amount of support that any one particular candidate, I guess, is going to get. Because did she wind up on the Democratic slate?
Yes.
Was she endorsed? Okay.
Yes.
So we know the power of the Democratic slate. So she's got a lot of factors, a large pool of people who are running, low voter turnout. She's on the ticket. That's not a guarantee, but I'm saying if you're looking at the criteria, just trying to objectively look at the criteria, and she's a known name, which also impacts how people vote on the ballot. So she's got a lot more working for her than she does working against her. But that, at the end of the day, again,
all I know is when her name comes up on some of these shows here locally, it just seems like the comments are all not good. They're all like, we're not voting for, You know, some of the people in the comments are really, really upset about, you know, the Evan Nolan thing. They're not letting it go. And you know, I wonder what the impact's going to be. So we'll see.
I'll just say that as we talked about this before, and I think was it Joe Mallory we had on the show. As I said then, to me, it is very disappointing that somebody would be criticized because they appointed a straight white person instead of a black person or whatever. I just think it's very disappointing that people have that attitude. Just as it
There's
would
nothing
be
disappointing about that attitude.
Just as it would be if a white person was expected to appoint another white person. I think we'd all say that's just plain.
It depends on the context.
That's bigotry. So I'm disappointed that so many people, if it is the case, would be angry at her simply because she felt the best person for the job happened to be a white guy.
I don't think that the word bigotry, I understand what you're saying. We had this conversation, you pulling us back in. I don't think I would call it bigotry. But if you ask me, like, Nate, what word is it? I'm struggling to think about it right on the fly right now, I must admit. But I don't know if I call that bigotry. And it could just because I'm a black man and I have a black man's lens. You know, I don't think that's unreasonable to say that the voters voted for a black male. That's who they voted for.
No, they voted for a person. People hopefully don't vote according to racial or gender guidelines. Hopefully.
No, he is a.
You can't say that when the last major election in the country was based solely on gender and race. Like, let's call a spade a spade. The reason why Kamala Harris is not currently our president, a major part of that is because she was a black woman. So we cannot say that people don't vote on the basis of race. That's just not intellectually accurate.
They do. It's
not honest.
It's very disappointing.
That's not honest. It's America, Phil. And like I said, the voters voted for, what was the brother's name? I can see his face. He was on city council. He left to go to the Biden administration. What's the brother's name again?
Reggie
Harris.
Reggie Harris.
The voters voted for a black male. That's who they voted for.
They voted for a man who happened to be black. You're
right.
Putting the worst. No. You are putting the worst motives, frankly, on our black.
That's not a bad motive.
They vote for race.
Here's the distinction
to say about the electorate, the black electorate in this community.
No, here's the distinction that Phil is missing. And I think black people, white people, men, women, they generally don't think about this any differently. So the first thing I think most people look at is qualifications. Are you qualified to do the job? Because the first thing that black people don't want is an unqualified fool in office or in any kind of job just so they happen to be black. So we'll say first and foremost, you got to be cut to be able to do the job. You have to be competent to do the job. So I think people of all colors want that. What we're talking about here is essentially what is the tiebreaker, right? What is the thing that, all things being equal, if I've got, my choice between 3 or 4 people and any one of them could do the job, and I don't know them personally or have a vested stake in their future, what is going to be my tiebreaker? And I say this all the time. This is the tiebreaker in corporate America. Depending on the color of the person who's doing the hiring, is who they're going to feel most comfortable with. And who they're going to feel most comfortable with is usually somebody who shares the same skin color as they do. That is the ultimate tiebreaker. So look, I'm not going to lie to you. There are a whole lot of black people who voted for Barack Obama because you had the opportunity to elect the first black president of the United States. That was a huge historical thing. But you know what? If Barack Obama had been Don King, he wouldn't have got black people's votes. Exactly. Okay. Barack Obama got black people's votes because he was qualified and he was black. That was the icing on the cake. So when we're having this conversation about Mika Owens choosing Evan Nolan, what you really have to ask yourself is not just are black people upset because Mika Owens didn't put another black person in there? Was it that she had a chance to put a qualified African-American in the same seat who could have done the same thing that Evan Nolan did? And then you maintain the power structure of a majority black council for the first time in history. It's sort of the same concept. So it's what's your tiebreaker? And I think that's the challenge that a lot of people.
But you're assuming that the way she looked at it was, hey, there are 3 qualified candidates. They're equal.
No, clearly she thought Mika Owens.
She felt Evan Nolan was much more qualified for the job than the other 2. We don't know that.
And that was her position. That was her position. And there are some people who are choosing not to believe that, right? They're choosing to believe that there were some other things going on. The mayor putting pressure on her. people are just not willing, people who might be upset with that are not willing to accept her explanation for why she chose Evan Nolan. And that's essentially what it boils down to, is they don't believe that excuse that she gave for why she picked him.
Me personally, I didn't appreciate the pick of Evan Nolan, because just off the simple fact of none of us knew who the hell he was. Like, nobody knew of Evan Nolan. At least I didn't know of an Evan Nolan. So it was like it felt like a complete like sucker punch, because not only is this person, the reason now that council no longer has this black majority, but also I have no idea who this guy is. I have
Can
no
I ask you a
idea
question,
of
Raven?
his values. I have no idea of what his standpoint is, or how his interests might align with mine as a black woman in Cincinnati, because despite what you might feel that is important to my existence here. It affects everything that I do and everything that I'm attached to. So it's a big deal to me that you are removing something that could have been beneficial to me in my existence in this city.
Let me ask you,
and you've given me somebody who I have no frame of reference for. That's number one. But I could have been cool with Mika if the comments regarding Ozzy, like, that's really what it is for me. It was the comments regarding Ozzy that really turned me off of her. Because you can say what you want to say about you thought that Evan was qualified and all these other things. Cool. I can't argue with that. I might not like it, but I can't argue with that. But then you go and you attack the character of this black man who I know and I understand to be very vital and very essential to the community that he serves. You lost me, sis. But go ahead, Phil, with your question.
No, I was just going to say, you sort of answered it a little bit by saying, because I don't know, is it OC? I don't know him, don't know anything about him, so I'm in, or even remember what you said, so I'm in no position to comment on that. But what I was going to ask you was, if you said that they appointed not only a white guy, but somebody you didn't know anything about, let's say they had appointed a black guy, she had appointed a black guy who you knew nothing about. Would you be okay with that?
I won't say that I'll be okay with it, because at the end of the day, there were people who were on that short list that we saw that was that was given to the public. There were people on that list that were black that I had no frame of reference for, so I wasn't the most excited about them becoming my new city council member. I forget what's his name. It's the guy who I think he was involved in like real estate or something like that. I can't remember his name. But he was a black guy.
Oh, okay.
He was a black guy who was on that short list that was I think it was in the Inquirer, maybe. I'm not entirely sure.
I know who you're talking about. His name is on the tip of my tongue. I can't pull it right now.
Yeah, but that guy, I didn't know much about him, so he wasn't somebody who I was even like thinking about, being appointed to that seat. But I sure did recognize the name of Ozzy Davis, and not only just his name, because I know that's also a thing that happens in elections here. People don't necessarily do their research; they just go off of name recognition. I, unfortunately enough, have learned enough in the last couple of years about politics to know that I can't just trust the name alone. So I did kind of base what I would prefer, which was a OZ. And I think there was somebody else on that short list. It was a while back. It was somebody else on that list as well whose name I recognized, and I knew also about their contributions to the community that I would have been okay with. But yeah, it race is a factor, but it's not the only factor. And also too, I just wanted to kind of circle back to what Kevin was saying when it comes to the way that black people vote and the difference between how we vote and how everybody else votes. We don't approach black candidates from the standpoint of doubting their competency. Like, we still do our due diligence and we still do our research and we still try to understand their platform. But when we have the chance to have black representation, we already know what that entails. We already know that for you as a black person to even put yourself front and center to run for office, all of your I's have to be dotted and all of your T's must be crossed. And so we don't have the same assumption of incompetency with black candidates that everybody else does. And so when it comes to something like this, it's not solely about the fact that we just don't vote for anybody black. We already have the assumption most times that if you are black and you are putting yourself in the running, the same way we did with President Obama, we knew this black man would not be running for president if his I's were not dotted and his T's were not crossed. his competency is a given. You don't run for the largest office in the United States as a black man and not know that you're qualified. So we don't have to question that. We don't have to dig through. We don't have to do all that extra stuff that a lot of our white counterparts do when it comes to minority candidates. Y'all come in with the assumption that they're incompetent because of, although you might not want to admit it, because of that bias that exists, because you enjoy the privilege of living under what has been for most of the time here, white supremacy. You don't have to, you do a lot less questioning of white candidates, because the same thing that you're accusing black people of when we vote, which is debate solely on race, you understand what that is. You know exactly what that is. You vote for the candidates that you vote for because not only do you know that they're competent, not only do you agree with their politics, but because they look like you, and you assume because they look like you, they have your best interest at heart. So let's not act like we don't know what that is, Phil.
Well, are you saying everybody does that, white
Everybody,
and black, or just
everybody wants somebody who has representation
I don't
that best represents them. Let's not do that. That's the entire point of politics. You want somebody in office who will best represent you, and you base that on not only their competency, but also their platform, and also how they represent you.
Let me say
and the best representation for you, Phil, is a white man, a white straight male who shares your same ideals about politics and who has a platform you can get behind. You're gonna go for that guy because he best represents.
Yeah, well, you can vote. That may be how. I understand you're not saying you just vote on race, but you're basically saying that's certainly a factor. Okay. Now, I don't claim I'm with that bias, but for example, I voted for Barack Obama when he ran against John McCain. Primarily, I had nothing to do with race, and he wasn't in my party, but I voted for him because John McCain was one of the people who pushed that Iraq war, which I thought was one of the most horrendous mistakes our country's ever made. And then he ran against Mitt Romney, who also, I think, had backed that war. But Mitt Romney, I think, was just, even though I came to admire him, he was kind of dishonest in that he had put what was in effect the predecessor to Obamacare in Massachusetts, and then he came out against it, which I thought was very disingenuous. So that's why I voted for Barack Obama.
But you described exactly what I said, though, Phil. John McCain didn't represent you because you could not get behind his politics. You could not get behind his platform, and it was okay to you in that moment to vote for the black guy because he better aligned with your politics. And we all are capable of doing that. Had I known of Evan Nolan and I was able to review his platform and get an understanding for his impact on the communities that he served, I might have been right on board with Mika. I might have been able to agree that the way that she made her decisions was because she chose the best candidate. But I don't know this guy. I have no frame of reference for this guy, and so that adds to the sucker punch of, not only are you removing this majority that is essential to serving black communities in this city because we don't have proper representation in the upper facets and compartments of local government. We're just not there. But also, you are giving me this stranger who I don't know anything about. It's bigger than race, but race is always going to be a factor because as a minority, it has to be.
Phil, let me give you a little bit of, let me add on to what Raven is saying here. Here's the one thing that you're not taking into consideration, and I think a lot of white Americans don't, is you have the luxury of being able to focus on certain policies, right? Or certain things that you can make your voting decisions on, because it's sort of implicit and implied in any majority white candidate that's going to run is not going to be too wildly divergent from where you are. What black voters have always had to consider is candidates and issues that mostly follow around cultural and social injustices that we've had to overcome. So yes, when we lean towards a black candidate, it is primarily because even if I don't know you, chances are great that we have a shared experience and a shared history that even if I don't know you, I at least know you get it, right? You get it. You come from, more than likely, and not in every case, everybody your color ain't your kind, but in most cases, you can reasonably assume that a competent black candidate who's running for office shares some of the same experiences and the same exposure that you've been accustomed to. So that's going to draw you to that person versus a white candidate that as we find through these conversations that we have on this pod all the time, that it takes a reasonable degree of explaining to help them get and understand where we're coming from. You don't have to think about that most of the time when 90% of the candidates who run and win elected office are white. That's implied, Phil. You don't have to think about it. Most white voters don't.
Well, down in the city of Cincinnati.
Well, it's more, but see, that's more politics than it is race. Like that's Republican, Democrat politics. That's more, and again, that boils down to policy, right? That's what you're parsing through. Black folks are parsing through policy, but they parsing through they parsing through policy, they're parsing through racism, they're parsing through a whole lot of things that are not a part of your political calculation when you walk into the voting booth. And that is what you're not considering. And there's no reason for you to.
I understand the point. I understand the point.
Tarris, what you think?
Hey, Tarris,
no, I'm listening. I'm listening. As a black elected official, someone who has went through the process of being elected in a 99% white town. Like I'm probably 1% of black people that live there, and I went to an all white town and was elected. You know, once I start talking about politics, I'm sure Kevin and Raven and Nathan will disagree and say that because black people are not monolithic, that since we might share the same kind of anecdotal upbringing as being black in America, although we have different political ideologies. So I agree with what Kevin's saying. And the reason why I wasn't speaking on the Mika Owens thing is because I'm not in Ohio, Cincinnati politics and the city council, and I don't want to speak on something that I don't know. That's just ridiculous for me to talk about anything that I don't know enough about that situation. What I did hear was that she had an opportunity to place another black person in office, and I'm not sure if since she got the highest vote, so that she was vice mayor and she got to appoint somebody, and her having that privilege, if it was me, race wouldn't have anything to do with it as a sitting member of a city council. Wouldn't have anything to do with it. It would have who aligns up with how I'm going to vote to get things that I need to get accomplished, because it has nothing to do. Like when you're sitting at the table, to me, to other people it might matter. To me, it's like, how can I get my platform that I ran off of, those things that I can go back to my constituents after a year or two in the next election. It's like, I ran on X, Y, and Z. I was able to accomplish X, Y, and Z. And when you're sitting there on a city council and you got 3 people voting and 3 people voting against you, anytime you can ally up. And sometimes, just like we can talk about how I'm a black conservative. If I'm a black conservative and we got a panel full of us, I'm going to go with whoever is going to align up with who's going to vote for me. It's not necessarily going to be the color of my skin. But I do understand how the majority of black city council in Cincinnati was extremely important, and I probably, me being me, I would have took that into a strong consideration before I would have handed over that majority to somebody else.
Yeah, to me, this is real simple. People are making this more difficult than it really has to be. Like, if you, and again, I'll use you just as an example, Tarris, just having a window into your life, man. He has a great social media presence. People should follow him on Facebook and wherever else he is. It's very interesting. But you recently put together an organization for boys, right?
Yes, I did.
And I'm sure as you were looking for a criteria of people who maybe, let's say you started a nonprofit. So if you're putting together a lot of board members, you're going to be looking for people that have some similarities, but also have different lenses, right? And
Absolutely.
Different skills. And so that's the same way with, if I'm putting together a city council, and race is a factor in that, because we live in a very, segregated world, right? Your experience is not my experience. And I think having at least 2 African-American men on city council at this time is a very valuable thing. And that's how I would look at it. I think race has to be a factor, but the determining factor is going to be your competency, right? For everybody, we really shouldn't have to say this, but people try to make this like, oh, black people trying to get all the power. That's how you trying to make it. But what it really is all about is we just want to make sure we have representation, and that lens and that experience is there in a competent individual. If you ain't competent, I'll take whoever's competent. They can be Asian if they're competent. But if everybody's about at the same level where everybody was in this decision, nobody's going to say that Evan Nolan. Because nobody's going to say that Evan Nolan, other than Mika Owens, perhaps, is going to say that Evan Nolan and what he, at least on paper, brought to the table is that vastly better than the people that she was considering. It's right about.
It doesn't have to be vastly. It could be
how do you know he's better? He's never been in that position.
No, I'm not saying he was. I don't know the guy, but I'm just saying that I would disagree either that the idea that they're identical. I said it's about right here. That he was vastly better. Maybe he just made the decision.
So if you remember what Mika Owens' explanation for why she chose Evan Nolan was she wanted somebody who could hit the ground running on day one. Okay. Evan Nolan had been around City Hall. He'd held some city administrative positions over the years. She knew him too. She was familiar with him and having had worked with him in the past. And I think she said something to the effect that he had some connections or things that he could bring to the table that, could get some things done specifically for the Black community and whatnot that she felt like the other candidates couldn't bring to the table. Okay. So let's just chart that out. Maybe his white skin gave him access to some people with money and capital that the Black candidates didn't have. If you want to translate that into terms and why she might have chosen him. Those are her explanations. I think when you look at a candidate like Ozzy is a wild card. Let's just put it out there. Ozzy, and I don't mean that in a negative way. I mean that Ozzy is a guy that's going to come in. He's for the community. Ozzy is going to speak. He's going to speak and he's going to say what he's going to say. And when you look at this makeup of this city council and what you got on there right now, and the types of even the types of Black people that you have on city council, this is just my opinion. Ozzy don't fit nicely. He's not that puzzle piece that fit nicely in there with the other Black council members that you have on there. And again, I don't mean that as a negative. I'm just saying Ozzy is different. Some people might look at that as a positive and saying like, you need that on council. You need that. You need somebody who's going to shake it up and ask questions and challenge some things and maybe not go along to get along, right?
That's exactly why people wanted Ozzy for that position, because we knew that if Ozzy get in there,
that's exactly why Mika Owens didn't want him and some of the others didn't want him on council. Let's just keep it real. I'm not saying that because Mika Owens told me that. This is my opinion on why Ozzy didn't get chosen. So I don't want anybody leaving here saying like, Mika secretly. No, she didn't say that. This is totally my opinion on why Ozzy didn't get on there.
Sorry about that. I was prepping for the next topic and it fired off in the background. Again, for me, I can't remember the other names that are on there. I'm not advocating for Ozzy. I just remember, and I can't remember all the names. I must be honest with you. I don't remember all the other names that were being considered. I just remember thinking that, at least on paper, Evan Nolan to me at that time didn't really stand out drastically. But ultimately, the person who had the responsibility made her decision, and it is what it is. I mean, people will have to decide for themselves if they're going to hold that against them. But let's move on. We've been on that topic for a minute. I got a quick video I want to play for you, because Obama is back in the news again. He's been thrust back into the news by everybody.
Obama's hands are on this. And what is he doing now?
Boy.
He's over here with his wife doing a podcast, walking without flip-flops on the beach, acting like his whole career was everything and a bag of chips. It wasn't. It was the most corrupt presidency we've ever seen. We thought Joe Biden was bad. Now we know who was behind it all. It was Barack Hussein Obama, and we need answers.
Yeah, so that's the new narrative now coming from the Trump administration. I don't know who that. Look at Tarris.
If they don't keep that man's name out their mouth, yes. That man was president. What, 8 years ago now?
More than that. What is it?
Like,
it's going on.
What are we doing? What are we doing? Keep his name out of your mouth. Before,
it ain't no fun when the rabbit got the gun. Now the DOJ has put all the focus on Barry Satoro. Oh, Barry.
Who is that? Who is that
It
guy?
don't
He
matter.
is a
It don't- he's
media
one of them.
surrogate for the Trump administration. I don't
I'm
know
just
his
curious.
whole. I don't have all this.
Let me. Can I? Can,
Hold
can,
on.
The fact
all right,
that you
can-
even
can-
got to
can I-
ask that
can I
question
finish?
tells you everything you know about how much credibility you ought to give that opinion.
Okay. His
Can I
name is Harrison Field.
Well,
Hold
I
on, let
think,
me
correct
answer
me
the
if I'm
question
wrong, if
real
I
quick.
remember what I've
Let me
saw
answer
in
the
the news.
question.
Second,
His
if I
name is
remember
Harrison Fields. He's the special assistant to President Trump.
Okay.
Okay.
He's a
Okay.
spokesperson
So let's
for
go
Trump.
there.
But
That DOJ, and they have focused all their attention on Mr. Obama and his Russian collusion hoax that he has started. So all this attention with the Letitia Jameses and all these other people who try to come after Trump, they have they have turned the tables, and now they're going after beloved Mr. Barack Obama, and they have all the powers that be and all the legislative power.
yeah, but it's all BS.
You say it's all BS, but they're saying the same. They're saying the
I know
same
it's
thing.
BS,
The
and I'll
same
tell you
thing
why.
that they did.
I'll
The
tell you why
same
it's- no, it's
Department
not
of
the same
Justice
thing.
and CIA
No.
that Barack Obama used against to make up the Russian collusion against Donald Trump and all those kind of things are going to come out, and it's going to show. And they can't get him for treason because of statute of limitations, but they're going to put all the focus, just like what they did on Donald Trump and try to get him locked up and all that kind of
They
stuff.
did on
And
Donald
what
Trump
happened?
because they were facts.
They're facts. We're going to see, Phil. We're going to see.
nothing.
We're going to see now that the rabbit has got the gun, just like January 6th is a memory.
The rabbit,
just like
the rabbit got
just
the
like
gun.
January 6th is a boom memory. Just like the Epstein files is a boom memory. Watch what they do to Barack Obama and his legacy. Thank you, Lord.
Terrence, first of all, they're not going to do. They're not going to do
his-
anything
his
to Barack
Heather,
Obama's legacy.
who is
This is,
not-
you know what this is. You
Watch
know what
this.
this is. This is just like the 2020. This is just like the 2020 election hoax by Donald Trump, the stolen election hoax. It's all bluster with no evidence. Even this little flimsy stuff that you can't even Tulsi Gabbard is trying to put out there is nothing. It's a nothing burger, and it ain't going nowhere.
Like
You know, the
Letitia James.
Republicans. Wait, let me finish, Terrence. The Republicans for 8 years of Barack Obama's presidency tried but could not put anything on him. You know how I know it? Because if they could have, they would have.
They would have.
You know they wanted to stain that black man up, but they couldn't for 8 years because he was clean. Now
watch
that
what
he
they're
gets
gonna do.
gets out, and you have arguably one of the most corrupt administrations in the history of the world running, you can't believe anything that comes out of this Trump DOJ or any agency piloted by this gang of incompetence that he got out there. You can't believe any information that they put out there. One, they don't have any. First of all you got to do is go back and look at the footage about what Barack Obama said as it relates to some of this issue. And he was on the record saying that there was nothing there, that there was no tampering, that there was no proof of any kind of Russian collusion or anything in the election. There are press conference videos out there of Obama saying it, so you can go look it up. This is not going anywhere. Do you know what this is? This is a Trump distraction to get the heat off of him and Epstein,
Them
just
Epstein
like
files.
he's
That's
releasing.
all that is.
Just like he's releasing the MLK files. This is more of Trump's cultural divide and conquer mentality. And he's been itching to get at Obama because Obama, you remember Obama used to roast him at those White House correspondence dinners and make Trump look like a fool. He has never gotten over that. And so he's always looking for an opportunity to besmirch Barack Obama. And any Republican or anybody listening to this thinking that this is going to go anywhere or there's going to be any charges or any tarnishing of Barack Obama's legacy, you go ahead and sleep on that, and maybe it'll give you a good night's sleep for a few nights, but it ain't going nowhere.
Okay. Well, in 4 weeks.
The only thing
I guarantee you, in 4 weeks from now, we'll have that same conversation, and Barack Obama's legacy will not look the same that it did 4 weeks from today, and then 4 weeks going forward, or 4 years going forward. Barack Obama will go down in history as the most corrupt and one of the worst presidents that ever came out. And watch when they start digging into his past. Watch as they start digging into his past and the things that he is starting to expound down, especially the direction that the United States of America going pro-family, pro-parent, and Barack Obama is still pushing this single mom, single parent household type of
Barack Obama is not in office anymore, Tarris.
What they do.
Barack Obama is not in office.
He's not in office anymore. When Donald Trump wasn't in office,
man said on the video, as the man said on the video, Tarris, as the man said on the video, Barack and Michelle is on the beach in flip-flops. They enjoying their life. They ain't worried about
podcasts,
Trump, or nobody else. Y'all need to let it. Y'all need to let it
Michelle
go.
Obama is doing a podcast with her
the
brother.
Democratic Party with the 16%. Come on, you guys are doing everything you can to save the Democratic Party, and the left. On the left and the right is doing everything, and they're going after your beloved savior, Barack Obama. And they're going to, for the next 4 years, they're going to do the same thing to Barack Obama using the Department of Justice, the CIA, and all these powers that be that Donald Trump heads. The same thing that Joe Biden and the Department of Justice and Merrick Garland did to Donald Trump using Letitia James and Fani Willis and all these people that they did to try to prosecute. They are going to use that same energy and go after Barack Obama and his legacy. You can say it's not right. You can say whatever you want to. But for the next 4 years, Barack Obama is under attack. Enemy number one for the Democratic Party from the Republican Party. Can he stand the rain? Can he stand the rain?
It's not about whether or not he can stay in the rain. It's whether it's about what is the purpose of the damn rain. He's no longer a contender for the presidency. Like, it's wasted effort. And truthfully, if any taxpayer dollars are used for any of this mess, I hope the American people get pissed off. I really do, and we should be. Because it's the way
that's not the issue.
Money
The issue is whether he did something wrong, not whether he's out of office. And he didn't do anything wrong. The truth is, the thing, Tarris, you like to kind of act like what I would say is what I call false equivalence. You're just saying, hey, this is no different than what the Justice Department did toward Trump. No different. Well, I'll tell you why it's different. And I say this as somebody who was a former prosecutor. I looked at the indictments and all the evidence they had against Trump on the election stealing stuff, taking those documents. They had that guy nailed. And as far as what Tulsi Gabbard is doing here, at obviously doing Trump's bidding, is she's trying to say that Obama contrived this whole thing about Russia interfering and all that. Well, here's why that doesn't hold up. Not only did the Mueller report indict a ton of people, including a bunch of Russians, and concluded correctly the Russians did interfere, but the Senate Intelligence Committee, including Marco Rubio and the other Republicans, they concluded after an extensive investigation that Russia interfered in the 2016 election. You're telling me Tulsi Gabbard and our CIA and FBI also came to that conclusion. So you're saying Tulsi Gabbard, who's a nitwit, who's by the way, whose videos play on Russian TV all the time, you're telling me that this nitwit she's found stuff that never was found, that whole Republican, the Intelligence Committee, the Senate missed it, and she's found it.
But that's the whole Trump MO, man. They love to create these conspiracy theories without any evidence, without any proof, and they get people ginned up on it until it comes back to bite them in the butt, like Epstein, right? Like, they gin that up until it came time to come up with the evidence and put it out there, and the client lists, and now suddenly, we don't have it, or you need to get over it. So they're going to do this same thing. This again, nobody with common sense, and Tarris, sometimes maybe I give you a little bit too much credit for having some, is going to actually look at this, and take it seriously. Beyond anything what it is just another Trump distraction, another way for him to try to dig into Barack Obama, which he's been wanting to do for a decade. That's all this is. And anybody with any modicum of common sense or a Google account and manages to do some real research can't figure out on their own.
Well,
you believe it if you want to believe it.
And Final talks about this in like if I say something that happens 3 or 4 weeks later on this programming, because that's just the way it goes. Donald Trump is going after Barack Obama for the same reasons that they went after him. It's all in the script. And the reason why I'm so happy about it is because Barack Obama will go down in history as the biggest hoax president of the United States of America. The biggest hoaxed
to
president.
Who, Tarris? Because ain't nobody would like Kevin.
Hold on. This is I'm glad that you said that, Raven. I'm glad you said that. Because if you look at the polls, like the Democrats like to look at the polls all the time, there's an approval rating of the Republican Party in the direction that the Republican Party is going, 63%. The Democratic parties are like, you guys are at 16% approval rating at the all-time lowest. So if you're taking those numbers right there, hold on. If you're taking those numbers right there,
they do not have an 84%.
63. I said
they have
63.
an 84% approval rating among Republicans.
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
Among Republicans.
63%. Donald Trump
among Republicans, not among Americans.
So let me finish the thought. And then you can answer this question.
We'll speak the right stats.
It's simple math. It's simple math. Okay. 60. Okay. If the Democratic approval rating is at 16%, and you guys are thinking that ideology that lost you the election, thinking that Kamala Harris is black and the only reason why she lost the election, not thinking about immigration, not thinking about the economy, not thinking about you're thinking. If those same people,
that is a broad generalization of what those approval ratings.
Donald Trump only won the swing states by 100,000 votes here. He only won this. If you guys take that same logic, you're going to continue to lose in the midterms, and this is going to be easy, low-hanging fruit to disparage Barack Obama. So if you guys keep taking this approach of Tarris doesn't know what he's talking about, all that kind of stuff, and you guys will keep losing elections and and then 4 weeks later, just like you are talking about Barack Obama's big bad bill and all those kind of things wasn't going to go through, and how what's his name, Hakeem Jeffries filibustered for all that time for nothing. And you guys say the Republicans.
I don't think anybody ever said the big bad bill wasn't going to go through. I mean, you had Republican majorities in both the House and the Senate. The reality was it was more than likely the bill was going to go through because you got a bunch of kiss asses on the Republican side who didn't even know what they were voting for and still voted for it because they kissed the ring.
But using that logic, if you have all these people capitulating to Trump, the media, everybody gets to tell the story. The rabbit's got the gun. It's going to be very easy to disparage and to damage Barack Obama's legacy if only 16% of the Democratic Party believes in anything that Barack Obama does. There's going to be so easy to paint a different picture.
That is such
just because you say it don't make it true, bro.
But that is such
just because you say it don't make it true.
Okay. But Tarris's interpretation, first of all, of those polling numbers is such a misrepresentation of what those polling numbers actually state. A 16% approval or any approval rating is, unless you ask voters a specific question about a specific policy, like for example, what is the approval rating on Trump's immigration policy? Right now, only 41. No, if you look at the latest numbers, it just came out yesterday. Only 41% of Americans approve of Donald Trump's immigration approach. 54% say no, and then I think there's like 5% of people who aren't sure, who haven't made up their mind. So those polls are only relevant if you're asking voters specific questions. Disapproval of Democrats could be everything from, I don't think they're fighting hard enough. I don't think they're hitting Trump as hard as they need to in some spaces. It's not necessarily all because they disagree with every Democratic policy that's out there. And that is such a bad take and interpretation on polling numbers, Tarris. Frankly, it's embarrassing. You should be ashamed of yourself.
It's about as good as take on polling numbers as the day before the election when the Des Moines poll came out. The Democrats had Kamala Harris winning, and you guys were hanging on to that.
Nobody believes in polls.
Now they don't believe. Okay,
nobody believes. Nobody 100% believes in polls anymore.
I'll say this. I'm just happy to see Barack Obama getting exactly what he deserves. I am so happy to see Barack Obama finally getting exactly what he deserves, and I hope he can stand the rain. I hope after 4 years, I hope that he gets exactly what's coming his way.
And what do you think? That
probably another book deal, probably more acclaim, and
that's cool.
Maybe he'll get another Nobel Peace Prize, which Donald Trump has never gotten.
Don't do that. Don't say that, Kevin.
There's something I don't know if anybody else is catching it, but it's just something about how excited for another black man's downfall
That
that
ain't
you are,
true.
Terrence. That bothers me.
Because Barack Obama ain't really black.
But
Barack ain't really black.
personally, that bothers me. That's number one. But number two, just the glee in your eye at the
Y'all
idea
got Donald Trump. Y'all deal with Donald Trump all the time.
Of him, like, I don't know, being tarred and feathered in front of the entire Americas. Like, I don't know. But then but also what kind of made me laugh too was like when you were talking about him doing a podcast. Like, why does that bother you so much? His wife and her brother
let me tell you
do a podcast
and
for
Barack
shits and
Obama
giggles
got up there and said that
people like to hear
black
them
men
talk,
don't need to
and
be in
that
their
bothers you. Why are you so upset about that?
Because it's not what him going on the podcast is what he said on the podcast, and it's not in my lens. From my lens, Barack Obama is not black. Barack Obama is African American. He's African American. Barack Obama is not black. Black is someone who, if you go back to the 1800s, if you go back to when the census was first. But
Terrence,
Barack
what
Obama
are we talking about? That is a black man.
It might be. Hold on. It might be
a black man.
He is an African American man. He has not had the black experience in any way. He does not have a descendant of slave. He did not have.
What do you think the black experience is?
The black experience is not. He grew up in Indonesia. He didn't have a black father. Yes, he did. He didn't have a black father. He was raised by a single white mother without black father representation. He does not care about black father.
You don't know that. You have no idea. You have no idea what black men were in his life. You have no idea. You cannot say that. That is not intellectually honest.
You asked me a question. You asked me a question about why do I not think Barack Obama's black? Because Barack Obama is African American. He is not a black. He's so it's just like Kamala Harris is black, and that's why the Democrats got beat. That's why the Democrats will continue to get beat.
Well, I'm glad Tarris is finally agreeing with the fact that we said that she got beat because of race. Thank you, Tarris. We'll go ahead. We'll go ahead and take
what I'm saying might be going way above what I'm talking about. But Barack Obama did not have the black experience that Nathan's had. Barack Obama had not black male experience that Kevin's had. Barack Obama has not. He lived a very well privileged life that traveled all around the world. Was perennial alienated against his black father.
Those things invalidate a black experience is insane to me.
Well,
because what you're telling me right now, Tarris, is that you think the black experience is only pain, only poverty, is only
it has something to do with blackness,
and that's crazy.
It has something to do with black people being involved, not just the color of your skin.
That's crazy.
It has something to do with black people being involved, not the color of your skin. If Barack Obama, the only thing black about Barack Obama is Michelle. That's the only thing black about Barack Obama. He did not go through the black experience. His parents were not involved in slavery. His parents did not pick cotton. His parents did not come through any of those things. He tethered over here, and his father did not have to get part of his life, was perennial alienated out of his life. His mom married somebody else, took him and raised him as a black man in Indonesia and in America, working along with USAID and all these other organizations, and he was groomed to get to the position he's in. And I'm happy for Barack Obama, but I'm excited to see. I'm very happy.
Sound like it, Terrence.
I'm happy to see the truth.
You sound like his biggest hater right now.
I'm happy to. I'm one of them. I'm one of them.
You sound like his biggest hater right now.
Barack Obama
you done said that man ain't black enough. You done said that man grew up privileged, so he ain't never had a black experience in his life. You're crazy. You crazy.
We have gone off the rails. We have gone off the rails with this one.
Lots of these are conversations that we need. Tarris, I was just gonna give you enough room to hang your own self.
But you guys feel like you guys feel like I'm hanging myself. But when the truth comes out, and when I'm telling you these things, Barack Obama he did not live the black experience. He does not come from. He did not come from.
What does that mean?
Because Democrats don't care. All you care is, that's a black man. That's a black man. And what did it get us? We are in a worse situation now as black Americans with less economic power and less everything power than when Barack Obama got involved. And that's what started it all.
And guess who's the president? Well, all this is going on. And it's getting worse every single day as they destroy the federal government and all of the wonderful protections that the federal government gave us. There's going to be a time in which people are going to look back and they're going to wish that they had what we're just watching be taken away from us. But I thought it was interesting because what I have learned is while because I have a different viewpoint, my automatic response sometimes is like, no, Tarris is out there. But what I've come to realize is there are millions of people who feel the same way. There are people out there who are waiting. They've always believed that Obama was dirty, whether they got evidence or not. That's what they believe, and they can't be shaken. And Trump, this distraction, it's not going to work on me because I'm not glammed like Tarris and other people are. I hate to put you out there, bro, but
But that's
Tarris
why
is
I asked
glammed.
the question: who is going to feel like his reputation is going to be tarnished? Because it ain't going to be me or any other black person.
Exactly, and you guys make up the minority of the United States of America.
That's not true.
See, this is where I have a problem with this. Not
that's
problem,
not true.
but this is where I don't understand your guys' delusionalism. You guys
tell that to the 92% of black women who voted for Kamala Harris in the last election.
I'm talking about.
Tell that to the 85% plus of black people in general who voted for Kamala Harris in the last election. We all
just say that
all you guys believe that she's
Tarris just used a very important word. He talked about delusionalism. And just like you say you can't understand people's delusionalism around Barack Obama, people feel the same way about your delusionalism around Donald Trump and a whole lot of MAGA people.
I don't have that around Donald Trump. I do not.
That's part of your problem.
I call Donald Trump
problem,
for the good and the bad. I'll call Donald Trump out.
Tarris, you think you're not
he
a
ain't
Trump
got that
guy,
though, Kevin. You ain't hear him. He ain't got that though.
You might as well have on the red, white, and blue flag shirt and the red MAGA hat. You think you're not a Trump guy, but you're doing all of his dirty work. You might as well be Tulsi Gabbard, the way you sitting over there stumping on that. You ain't gonna have me believing for 1 minute that you didn't vote for Donald Trump or you ain't a Trump guy. You must think I'm stupid. You must think I'm stupid. You must think
I wasn't voting for no fake black woman. I wasn't.
This is what I was gonna tell Nathan. Hey Nathan, if you want to get our viewership up, what you need to do is you need to cut Tarris's part and play it in all of these MAGA circles. Everywhere where there's a MAGA message board, a MAGA Facebook page, MAGA Instagram accounts. Cut the rest of us out. Just take Tarris's take and let that run, brother. This is what Hot Mic brings. We will explode our growth. I guarantee you. Cut me out, cut whoever else out. Put Tarris up there and get these MAGA folks watching this, because that will explode our numbers. I'm telling you, because you're right. The only people who are going to love what Tarris just said is not the broader American public, but all of those people who hate Barack Obama for no reason, who hate him because he's black, and who've been wanting to get something on him because he's black, because they hate the idea that a black man was actually president of the United States. That's who that's going to resonate with.
So what if they do? What if it comes out and it's true, and they drag it through this, and they find out that there's evidence, and it's
nobody's going to believe it. Nobody's going to believe it.
Okay,
Tarris, you know why nobody's going to believe it? Because the person that you helped elect and get into the White House is a notorious liar. And just like I told you, I wouldn't trust anything that came out of this White House, any intelligence, because they lie. Just like they totally obliterated Iran, only for Israel to come out and say, yeah, you know what? They still got some uranium over there. You can't believe anything this dude says because he's a liar. His administration is corrupt. To talk about Barack Obama corruption coming from this administration, that smacks of hypocrisy. And anybody on the Republican side, as much money as this guy has stolen, has used to profit himself from the White House, the fact that he's a convicted felon, you expect me to believe with any amount of credibility anything that comes out of this man's mouth or anybody that he has working for him? Nobody's gonna believe it, Tarris. Nobody but you and people like you who want to believe it.
With that, let's move on. So people have been talking about this viral video. I mean, it just looks terrible, of a man, I believe down in Jacksonville, Florida, and he got dragged out of his vehicle. So I'm going to play this for you, and then I'm going to play you a clip of the response from the police chief, and it's quite interesting. So let me pull it up, and I'll play it for you. No, off the beaten path a little bit, perhaps, but check this out.
He walked up, opened my door because my window don't work, right? Okay. And then I said, so what I did wrong? Yeah. He said, well, for one, your headlights are off under this weather. I'm like, okay. There's multiple people headlights off, first of all. And then there's no rain.
It doesn't matter. You're still required to have headlights on.
Can you pull that law up?
Huh?
Can you pull that law up?
Yeah, when you step out of the car, I will.
Can you call your supervisor? Huh? Can you call your supervisor?
All right, go for it.
Exit the vehicle now. Exit the vehicle. Show me your hands.
Here.
33 at 15 hours.
I'm here. What is your reason, sir? What is your reason?
Step out now.
All right. No, don't. Get on the ground.
Stop fighting.
Put your hands behind your back.
Put your hands behind your back. Hands behind your back.
Ooh, that's a tough spot to be in. I don't wish anybody be in that spot right there because it's just all bad stuff. So that's the video that everybody's been talking about. And now I want to play for you a clip from the police chief, black police chief. Let me play this for you. Let me pull it up for you real quick.
What city was this, Nathan? Just a little background.
Jacksonville, Florida.
Okay, do you know what the reason they say they stopped the car?
I believe, I can't remember. It was on the tip of my tongue. Does anybody remember?
It was headlights or something like that, illuminated headlights in the rain.
No, but there were three cops there. There had to have been some reason why there were three cops on the scene.
welcome to
being black in America, Phil.
Welcome to America, Phil. Yeah, when you're black, when it's something small like that, 4 cars roll up on you.
All right, I'm not excusing anything. I'm just trying to understand. But continue.
Yeah, I'm just trying to help you understand. That's why you're like, well, why so many cars there? For us, we're like, that's normal, right? So check this out. Here it is. It may take me a second to get it all up and going. Hopefully it doesn't fire before I start. Here we go.
One video clip devoid of context can be very misleading. Given that McNeil never brought this incident to JSO's attention, but rather pushed the cell phone camera footage that he had in his possession since March 5th out on social media, one can only assume, and I'm saying I assume, that he intended to inflame the public. The administrative process is still ongoing, and as such, I will neither defend nor commend Officer Bauer's response to resistance until all the facts are known and the investigation is completed. However, as the leader of this agency, I will not remain silent while important facts and information are buried to advance an anti-police agenda. The truth is, William McNeil Jr. was non-compliant with JSO officers within 21 seconds after he was stopped for multiple civil infractions. His non-compliance quickly rose to the level of criminal resistance to a police officer. McNeil was arrested and pled guilty to resisting a police officer without violence. Force absolutely looks ugly. And because all force is ugly, whether or not the officer involved acted within outside JSO policy, that's still what we're investigating.
There it is. I mean, is it just me? But off the top, he went against what he said. He said, I'm not going to give any opinions about it. And then he gave a strong opinion about it. But that's just what it is. That's he's a chief there. But given what you saw, what do you think about what he said, given what you just saw?
Can I go first on this one?
Sure.
And I want to address Nate and Anthony Poser. No matter my political stance and anything, I'm a black man in America. Today, I got pulled over. Today, stopped and frisked by Covington police officer because I had this on my wrist when I ran through a stop sign. And they said, oh, you got a THC vape on your wrist. Asked me if they could search my car. I was scared to death. 3 police officers showed up. Hell yeah, 3 police officers showed up. Pulled me out of the car, made me put my hands on the car, searched me, went through my car. I got a medical marijuana license in Kentucky that saved my butt because I put it on my phone. They're all over this for being black and running a stoplight.
What's the thing in your hand, Tarris? I can't tell.
It's a marijuana THC vape pen. It's a vape pen. I got a medical marijuana card in Kentucky. The only thing that saved me, or I would have been career over, done today, just because of this. Being a black man in the United States of America, getting pulled over by so in the comments, we might not agree on politics or Donald Trump or Barack Obama, but let's not get one thing twisted. I'm still black. Every time, all day, every day. Black man in America. So watching that clip, I just had this happen to me. At 10:30 this morning, I had to call my son and tell him, hey, I'm pulled over by a police officer. Tell my client I'm gonna be a little bit late. And when the cop, I didn't know I thought I was going to jail. I thought I was going to jail today over a weed pen. Seeing that video and seeing that young man get punched in the face, there's no excuse. This this I'm gonna land here because I'm emotional on this. This is why Black people don't trust police. I was scared to death today. Fortunately, I know how to articulate myself and talk myself to a police officer because I was scared. And I said, I was fumbling on my words. I was like, no, I do not smoke in my car. I said, I almost asked for a supervisor. I almost did this, and he was setting me up to let me talk. And I said, and I said, do what you got to do. But that's why I have the conversations with my sons. The police officer today asked me I had a firearm on me. I went through the whole. It's like I was going through the whole thing before. Like I told you on this program, being pulled over and have guns put in my face by Cincinnati police officers. It's just I just don't. When it comes to policing, and these police officers did everything that they were supposed to do, and I give kudos to the Covington police officers today. But today, I was scared to death for being stopped and frisked, and had 3 police officers behind me for running a stop sign.
Kevin, Tarris, that's traumatizing, man. People really underestimate how coming in contact with police can have a lasting effect on you. So I definitely validate it. But in hindsight, I think perhaps when you're driving around, are you going to have that thing hanging out the side of the car? Because that's where you were slipping at, homie.
Absolutely. I switched cars with my wife, and I wasn't thinking. Dropped off the keys to her because I was my wife's key fob wasn't working. I drove to Alexandria to take her my car. I was in my wife's car, and so I was all discombobulated. I wasn't thinking about that. I was just thinking about getting to work to my client so I could get to handle my business and do. I wouldn't be at this podcast today. So the Black experience.
You think they would have did that if you were a white guy? If you were a white guy, same scenario, same car, you think they would have stopped you? You think it was? Do you think it was the combination of he doing some kind of drugs and it's a black guy?
I ran the light. I ran the light. I ran the stop.
You ran the light.
I ran the light.
Okay.
I ran the light. I ran.
So this is all your fault then.
Yeah, but I'm saying it still doesn't take away the scarcity of when I said that because
I understand.
When Phil said why 3 cop cars, and I was trying to bring that in correlation.
No, and I feel it. I've been there before too. In some routine, you're like, why is it 3 rollers here? That makes no sense. I'm complying with you, but officer don't feel safe or whatever. But yeah, you gotta stay on point these days, man. I mean, as every day is. And
I'll say this, and I'll say this, and if I would have, and if something would have happened left, and I wouldn't have had my medical marijuana card on me, and they would have took me down to the station, as a black man, my career would have been in question. If they would have handcuffed me, took me down to Kenton County, first thing linked NKY or Cincinnati Enquirer would have put on there, Dayton City Council member gets arrested for possession of marijuana.
Yep. Right.
I'd have a black man, and then the social media. Oh, we trusted this black man to be a city councilor, and we bring around our kid, and though he's legally allowed to have marijuana, and he made a mistake and ran a stop line and violated a traffic station, and now I got to answer these questions as a black man.
You're right. All that would have happened, but in this case, I gotta be real with you, bro. That would have been on you.
Okay. You're right. You're right.
Stop sign. Once you do that, you already know everything else comes with it.
Yep.
Had you not ran a stop sign and they pulled you over just because, now that's something different. But I ain't gotta tell you, you're a grown man. You know what you're doing.
But can I also just interject the point of? Sure. I feel like the use of force for a person who has not been suspected of committing a violent crime is just disgusting. Like and it might not even, what I'm saying might not even meet the standard of law. But I just personally, I find it disgusting. There was no reason to punch that man in the face. He did not pose any sort of violent threat to anybody on the scene. So for you to, first of all, you broke his window, which he said he couldn't have rolled down if he wanted to because it's broken. He said that. That was the first thing out of his mouth in the video. So that's number one. But you break the window unnecessarily because you end up opening the door anyway. So that's number one. So the aggression on the side of police is already there off top. You broke my window. You didn't even pull me through it to get me out the car. You opened my door to get me out the car anyway. That's number one. So at that point, I now know your sole purpose for breaking my window is to punch me in the face. You had that in mind. You wanted to punch me in the face because that's what felt good to you in that moment.
Yeah.
And again, you're doing this to me for a traffic violation because you don't like the way I'm responding to these orders that you're giving me because of this traffic violation. Then I asked you for a supervisor. That really pissed you off. So now you really feel validated to punch me in the face. I don't get why we be so forgiving of the use of force for non-violent crimes. That will never sit right with me. It just won't.
Yeah, because here's where it'll go. And I see you remember I've mentioned this a couple of times. There's this podcast called the Civil Rights Lawyer, I think is the name of it, and he does videos just like this. He's a civil rights attorney, and he breaks these things down all the time. Incidents just like this. There was another incident that I saw where the police did the same thing, broke a brother's window, drug him out of the car, similar situation. And it's always the same thing. These officers are aggravated. One, when you question, when you start asserting your right to question if your rights are being violated. And even when you call, I've seen this scenario a dozen times when people have asked, hey, get your supervisor on here. I'm not going to argue with you. Bring your supervisor in and then let's settle that. All of that escalates these police officers to a point where they react in their feelings. This isn't about resistance or non-compliance. These officers are pissed off that their authority is being challenged. There was no excuse for that one to break the brother's window. Again, to Raven's point, if you could just open the door, and if the brother refuses to get out, then maybe you do have to kind of go in there and get him out. That is a part of non-compliance. But the whole smacking him in the face was completely uncalled for. Like, that is an escalation of violence that officer needs to be reprimanded. That man presented no threat to him. He had no weapon. He'd already showed you his hands that he didn't have anything.
Kevin, that you heard the police.
It doesn't matter. I'll be interested to look at their use of force criteria, but I don't think that a simple verbal resistance is enough for a police officer to reach through the car window and punch you in the face. I don't care. I don't care if you told him no. There's no excuse for that level of violence, and that officer should be reprimanded. He should be suspended, if not fired at a minimum. I don't know. We'll see how it plays out. But I think anybody watching that. Now, I'm not saying, look, my position on this has been clear. You're not going to win in that environment because the police officer has all of the control, all of the power, the badge, and the license to kill. So arguing with a police officer in that situation where you have nothing going for you, the only thing you get out of that is video footage like what you got if you're lucky enough to get out of there with your life, or you get a date with the court. And so my position has always been, give them what they want in the moment. Get out of the situation alive. And then go get you a lawyer if you feel like your rights have been violated. But I see too many black people, and look, it happens to white people too. Because like I said, I'm like a rights attorney. I see them do this to white people too.
You just saw it on the bridge.
Win the argument in the heat of a traffic stop with police. You best to get out of the situation alive. But I get people is like, I ain't going. They violate my rights. Okay, you can take that position, and we see where this ends up 9 times out of 10, particularly if you black. So
you guys are saying about the bridge. You guys are talking about the bridge. Like we take that same anecdotal. I deserved what I got because I ran a stoplight. Do you see that I deserve to be pulled over? And all the things that happened to me today was my fault because I ran a stoplight and I broke the law. We could say the same things, or it is completely different. The protesters broke the law by coming over from Cincinnati to Ohio or to Kentucky, where the police had a barricade and saying, "Stop! Don't come any further."
What was just help me out? What was the violation? Were they blocking the street? Because
they were coming. They were walking. They were walking down the middle of the Roebling Bridge, creating a traffic and police. And they got word over in Ohio because they cited them. And they let them go in Ohio. That's a completely different situation. Then they come to Kentucky, and Kentucky's got a barricade, a police officer saying, "Don't come any further." And those people disregarded the police's and did not comply and kept moving forward. And then the melee happened on the bridge. So with the same effort that you guys had said to me, Tarris, you were in the wrong. because you ran that stoplight. So the police gave me every opportunity to do whatever they wanted to me because I made that mistake. With that same,
I don't
with
think
that,
that's
hold
what
on, with that
Nathan
same,
said,
with that, that's what Nathan said to me.
wrong.
And with
No,
that, with that same energy, go to the protesters who are walking across the bridge. The police said, "Don't come any further." They continued to come, and then they got dealt with by the police.
No, here's what the police have the right to do. So if you run the stop sign, right, and they pull you over for that, they do have the right to pull you out of your car if they see you with a marijuana vape. You have the right to be patted down because now you have opened the door for that. Now, what they don't have the right to do is to punch you in the face.
Exactly. Right.
Because you ran a stop sign and had a vape pen. So I think the amount of force that police use has to be commensurate with the crime, which is to Raven's, I think, initial point. Like, to use violent force on non-violent suspects is unacceptable, in my opinion, and no decent citizen should say that it is. Now, here's what I would say about the protesters on the bridge. Yes, they were breaking the law. Yes, that created a dangerous situation because, look, I'll tell you this much. I don't like driving over that bridge. I don't like walking over that bridge. So you're blocking that bridge. It does create a public safety situation. Now, this is my problem that I've always had with the police. They give you an order, but they don't even give you time to comply with the order. It's like, hey, stop. And then they popping off shots. It was the same thing in that situation on the bridge. They needed to give people a little bit more time to comply with the order to move and get off before you start firing pepper spray and all of that stuff into the crowd and manhandling folks. Now, if folks are still resistant after you give them a decent amount of time to reply to the order, well, then, yeah, Tarris, you're right. You get what you get because they've asked you to move. Now they might have to use some crowd control things because you are in violation of the law, regardless of what First Amendment say about your right to protest and all that. You do not have the right to block a public transportation way. So the problem that we had with Covington was it looked like, and again, all of the investigation and the details, but if you're looking at the video, it looked like the police response in the amount of time that they gave folks to comply was a little bit much in that situation, at least to me. I would have liked to have seen them handle that situation a little bit different.
If they're blocking off the bridge and they're walking toward and they're screaming commands, if they're blocking off the bridge at one point of the Rolling Bridge, like you said, and the people are coming over from Rolling Bridge from Cincinnati, and the police officers are barricading, don't come any further, and they keep coming. How much further? And then it didn't get. They just wanted. I mean, from what I saw, it looked like a complete opportunity for the left to try to paint the picture that ICE was doing something that they weren't. From all the things that I saw, like, oh, ICE was the one who did this and didn't. That's the national news part of it. We are lucky enough to have the real information and to know that the protesters had a permit over in Cincinnati and they had a lawful demonstration, peaceful protest that got a little bit rowdy whenever they were pushing up against a car that was about to come over across the bridge. The police officers cited them and let them go. Vast difference between what happens in the Commonwealth of Kentucky and Ohio. It's like going from slavery to freedom. So when they come across that bridge, because the Ohio River is owned by Kentucky. So when they start crossing that bridge, when they start hitting that waterways, that's Kentucky sovereignty. So they have to go pocket, and so they did not have a permit to protest in Kentucky. That's why Kentucky is like, turn around, go back. They said, no, we shall overcome, and met with force. So those are the truths of this situation. And what happened on the bridge after all that, according to your guys' logic, if you break the law, whatever happens with the cops happens with the cops. That's what happened. So all the narrative is that, ICE was running up on people and just beating their heads in. It's so not true.
Yeah, I think the context is different, but I hear what you're trying to say there. I think that Covington, the best thing that can come out of this is that Covington learns, and perhaps Covington needs to learn from Cincinnati police on how to deal with these kind of situations.
Or vice versa, Nate. Or vice versa. I
believe
Cincinnati needs to learn. I believe Cincinnati needs to learn from Covington because I guarantee you, because a couple weeks later, the No Kings rally, there was a permitted No Kings rally right here in Covington, right over by the hour, and it went over without a hitch. Police were there helping them. But here's what I'm gonna say, because I thought about this and I knew I was gonna say this.
I'm not criticizing them per
I was
se.
gonna say if you're going to say Covington needs to take a lesson from Cincinnati.
Yeah, they do.
Hold on.
Maybe.
Let me make this statement, and I'll say, if the KKK or the skinheads that showed up in Lincoln Heights would have showed up in Covington and did the same thing in Covington that they did in Lincoln Heights, Covington would have arrested them and rolled their heads. It wouldn't have been let me help you get up out of here. Let me help you get up out of here. If the skinheads would have came to Covington and did the same thing, if they would have done it on the Roebling Bridge, the same thing they did in the black part of Cincinnati, it would have been a complete different story. So I don't believe that Covington needs to be more like Cincinnati. I believe Cincinnati needs to be more like Covington. So when people come in and they come in unpermitted, like the Ku Klux Klan or the skinheads, they get dealt with. They don't get escorted out of town.
First of all, I disagree with that. I think one of the things that y'all are missing in this conversation, and Nathan said it, is I think you got to look at the context, okay? There's the difference between people protesting in a park or in a permitted area where streets have been contained or whatever in some ways that we've seen, versus people loading up on a bridge, a public thoroughfare that creates a safety issue, particularly when it hasn't been permitted and planned for, right? So I think the police response in Cincinnati is different. I think that's an entirely different situation. I think, what was it, during George Floyd or something? There was a huge protest that spilled out. What was that, on the I-75 or something like that? If I'm not mistaken. I mean, that's a dangerous situation. I mean, and this is not just about muting protests. It's about keeping people safe. Because look, you got all kinds of crazy folks out there on these highways that may not be, or bridges that may not be barring it. They may not care that you out there protesting for justice. They might be trying to get to where they're getting to or whatever, and they ain't got time to bar what you doing. They coming through with their car or whatever. So it's not just about violating the protesters. It's also about their safety as well. So you got to also take that into consideration when you think about the sense of urgency that police have to apply to a situation. Again, that is not excusing the level of force that Covington did. What I'm trying to say is people marching across a bridge unsanctioned or a highway unsanctioned is very different than a permitted protest that police have the opportunity to know is coming, to plan for, and kind of be somewhat, respectful of the protesters and that type of situation. So those are two very different scenarios. They're apples and oranges, and you can't try to compare.
Which one? The skinheads protesting unpermitted in Evendale, and the people protesting.
Well, first of all, there were 9. First of all, there was, I think, what was there? There was like 5 or 6. They weren't in the middle of the road. They were on the overpass.
Now you're trying to minimize the situation. Now you're minimizing the situation, Kevin.
No, I'm not minimizing the situation. What I'm trying to say, 15
to people
Tarris,
doing the exact same thing.
If you want to tell me 5 people not standing in the road,
15.
standing on an overpass is anything like 100 or some odd people marching across a bridge, if you think those two things are exactly the same thing,
I'm saying they both.
Then I don't know what to say about it.
I'm saying they should both be met with the same amount of force if they're both unpermitted. The Evendale police came in there like, hey, skinheads, you don't need some help out? Here, let me escort you out of the city. Let me show you. You need some water? You want me to go get your dog? You want me to go get your dog? Covington police officer put them hands.
Evendale police told them Klansmen to get going. Guess what? They got up out of there, didn't they? They got in. In fact, they even said, hey, can y'all give us a ride?
And
so if you want to talk about the difference in the reaction, the skinheads or whatever you want to call them, when the police told them to get out, they left.
It just don't make no sense to me. That doesn't make any sense to me how it's okay, how the logic is different when both situations were unpermitted. The skinheads were unpermitted. The people who crossed the bridge in Covington into Covington were unpermitted. how they were handled were completely handled different. So I was bringing the correlation in because Nathan says the city of Covington needs to do more like the city of Cincinnati. And I was saying the city of Cincinnati needs to do more like the city of Covington, because if the skinheads, it would have been reversed. And the skinheads would have came to Covington and marched down the Roebling Bridge. They would have got their heads rolled. So it wasn't, they would have got their heads rolled.
No.
Yeah, I was going to say that there was no, and again, you're taking out of context the public safety threat. I get you. If you want to, Tarris, if you want to look at the circumstance, I'm willing to do that. But let's look at all of the circumstances. What you're trying to do is you're trying to cherry pick one thing. They were both unpermitted, and then you want to leave out all of the rest of the facts and say, well, Evendale should have reacted the same way Covington did. Look, I agree that that people should have First Amendment rights to protest, but that First Amendment right to protest goes out of the way when you present a public safety threat. Okay, so Covington police, Cincinnati police should allow people to peacefully protest so long as they're not creating a public safety threat. But once you cross that line and you create a public safety threat, they didn't even tell those folks that they couldn't protest. What they said was, you got to get off the bridge. They didn't tell them that they couldn't keep marching. They told them to get off the bridge, and they didn't move off the bridge, at least not fast enough. Right? Like that's the conversation. So if they'd have got off the bridge and maybe moved off to the side, they could have kept on marching. I don't know. We don't know. It escalated too quickly. That my only problem with that was, like I said, I feel like Covington police maybe didn't give them enough time to comply with the order. I don't know. I mean, I don't know enough about what the interaction was when they were told to get off. It just seemed like it was quick to me. One last topic here before you roll. So this is interesting. So everybody's been following this Epstein's files, right? And so the Democrats have been maneuvering to try to get a full vote to release the Epstein files. So here's what's happened within the last 24 hours. Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, he shut down the House and sent them through basically an early 5-week recess. People are saying it's in an effort to block the vote on the Epstein's files. What is it that Republicans are trying to hide? Or that's one way of looking at it. I don't want to poison it. What do you take from this? What do you take from this?
They are doing Mike Johnson particularly is doing the bidding of his all-powerful leader. He is trying his very best to make sure that we don't ever see Trump's implication in those files. Basically, exactly what it said. Like, this is a no-brainer. He is doing he's doing what he has been likely instructed to do, but if not instructed, inspired for sure to do, which is to protect his leader. He don't want us to see them files, and he don't want Trump to get implicated. Like, it really don't even really take too much thought. It's exactly what it looks like.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I think it's just more stall tactics. I mean, look, here's the reality is if they really wanted to get to the bottom of this Epstein thing and the files and who was on the client list, they have one real way to get that. The one woman who knows everything about what Jeffrey Epstein was doing and who was helping to facilitate what was going on is sitting in prison right now, serving a 20-year sentence. If Pam Bondi and the Justice Department really wanted to find out who was on that client list, all you got to do is offer a woman who's serving 20 years a deal to turn over some evidence.
No. Yeah, exactly. That's the problem. The problem with this Justice Department is it isn't going to be, hey, we want to just hear the facts. No, what they'll go in is they'll make it clear what they want her to say. And it's not going to be unfavorable to Donald Trump. So the idea of her testifying doesn't make me feel we're going to get any justice here. It's all pretty clear. Okay. First of all, we all know that Trump and his people just made up this whole conspiracy and ginned up the base for the last couple of years. And as Kevin said, now it's biting them in the rear. But the fact is, the right thing to do is to release the files, period, which they all promised to do. And, we don't know what's in those files, but let's be honest. Do you think if there was nothing in there that was incriminating or negative about Donald Trump, you think they would have any hesitation to release him? Not at all. So I think we have a good suspicion that there's stuff in there, given that they've totally gone back on what they've been saying for years. If you listen to those old interviews with Kash Patel and Bongino, release the files. Biden's name's in there and all these other people. Now suddenly, I mean, it's just the total opposite. Nothing to see here, folks. Nothing to see.
I think at this point, it's honestly, it probably might even be a moot point, because if they do release the files, everything is going to be redacted. Like, there's going to be so much black Sharpie all over them files that it won't even matter.
That's not releasing the files. That's not genuinely releasing it. The way to release it is to only black out the victims, not any of the politicians.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to release. And like Raven just said, if they do release it, there's going to be so many people's names on both sides of the aisle. I mean, because at Epstein Island, it's documented that Democrats had fundraisers there. Hillary Clinton was there, Barack Obama, George Clooney, all of them attended fundraisers.
And why doesn't Trump want to release him? Why doesn't Trump want to release him?
I wish he would. I wish. Hold on. Hear me out.
I'm asking you.
I think it's going to do all of them. It's going to like Democrats, Republicans, Trump, Obama, everybody.
Why isn't Trump releasing him? Why isn't Trump releasing him?
My question. I don't know.
Just answer.
I wish that he would.
Oh,
I wish
you have a guess?
Because if Trump's on there, who cares? Who cares? If Trump's going to be on there, it's going to be if they release the files and Trump's in control of the DOJ and the CIA and all the media who gets to control the narratives of everything. So as soon as they put Trump's name out there, there's something disparaging, he can go up and he can sue them like he did the Wall Street Journal, or he can go and sue them. And it's what
who is he suing?
Somebody made a picture. Somebody put a picture and lied and said that he wrote a picture to.
No, I'm saying in this situation, who would he be suing? The DOJ?
Let me just say this, Tarris. I'm gonna let you in on a little secret about Trump's lawsuit against the Wall Street Journal. He might want to reconsider that, because what he's looking for is all the stuff that he thinks going to come out in his favor in the deposition. But guess what? A deposition goes both ways, and he may wind up stepping on a hornet's nest of having to reveal some things about himself. As it relates to,
he don't care.
No, he's not thinking that far ahead.
That's what I'm saying, Phil.
Phil,
let me finish my point. That's what I'm saying, Phil. That's what I'm saying. That's why I started out with my comments about this might come back to bite him in the butt, because I don't think he thought about that.
When does it get? When can this bite Trump? When can this bite Trump in the butt? On his next election, he's not going to be elected anymore. His legacy is done. He's after the first 100 days and the stuff in the Genius Act and all the big beautiful bill, all these acts that he's putting in place right now, it's over. All this Trump deranged syndrome, it's over. If he releases the Epstein files, he's all up and down it. It don't matter. Even Donald Trump said himself, he can go in downtown and shoot somebody on 5th Street, and it's not good. Only people it's going to matter to is the Democratic minority who is dwindling away as we speak.
First of all, Tarris, that's such an idiotic.
Just because you say something don't make it true, Tarris.
That is such an idiotic take. I don't even know where to begin with that. First of all, if Donald Trump were to be linked to Epstein, it would be devastating for him, and it would be devastating for the Republican Party, because here's the reason why. Is because all of these Republican politicians at that point would then have to make a choice. They would have no choice but to divorce themselves from Donald Trump immediately, because if they didn't, it would stick to each and every one of them in their upcoming elections. They could kiss the White House goodbye in 2028. Any chance of that, if they chose to stick by him, if that came out, it would be devastating. This is where you haven't thought through. You need to quit drinking the MAGA Kool-Aid and actually put your thinking cap on. You can't, if Donald Trump were to ever be linked to this, that ain't nothing that, he's done in 4 years, right? Donald Trump is done in 4 years. There's probably not much that he cares about or that you're going to do to him. But there are still a whole lot of Republicans who got political aspirations ahead of them that are not going to stick next to a dude that's been involved in child sex trafficking conclusively. Come on, Tarris, you're not that dim.
I agree. Okay, hold on. I agree with what you're just saying. But May 2026, You're going to see a great divide, just like at the Democratic Party is dwindling down. In the May 2026, you're in the primary, the Republican primary. You're going to see all these people who are going against Trump, who Trump are going to put opposition against, and we're going to see how powerful MAGA is or the Republican Party is. We're going to see, and as we stand, if the Republicans stand to gain 4 or 5 more seats, especially in Texas, where they're about to gerrymander the whole state to make it even more of a Republican House, you guys are focusing on the wrong thing. I know y'all say I'm crazy and all that kind of stuff, and I talk crazy, but I believe that you guys focus on the wrong things. I'm focusing on the fact that the midterms are coming, and you guys are focusing on Donald Trump and the Epstein list. And even if it came out right then, it would divide it would give more of the Republican Party more of a chance to divide and dump away from Trump and MAGA. I've been saying that they use MAGA to get elected. Now that you're seeing Trump say, "I don't care, release the files. If my fans don't care, I don't care." Trump does not care. They're moving on. We are moving on and shifting and moving to the midterms in 2026.
Well, if he doesn't care, why doesn't he release it?
I believe it's all a game, and I believe it's not because of him. I believe what's his name? Dana White. Dana White ain't ready to release him yet. That deal. Dana White ain't ready to release him in this week. Maybe they might release him. Maybe they might release him at the UFC fight. Maybe they might release him at the UFC fight at the White House. That'd be a good spin. Release the Epstein files at the UFC fight when they have it on the White House lawn. They can have him going on a Bumblecon, have somebody commentating. Joe Rogan could be there, read it off.
This is what we're up against, folks.
Yeah,
this is what we're up against.
But you know, one thing I will agree with what Tarris said, because I got into a back and forth with a guy who I know is a Trump supporter, and you know, he basically came out and said it. You know, because I made this comment about, you know, hey, I when I vote, I consider people and their the person and their policies. And he was just flat out like, I don't look at the person at all. I just look straight at the policy. And I think that's the dope that everybody in MAGA and Trump supporters have sold themselves on that bill of good. Because if I say, hey, I'm just looking at the guy's policy, then that means that I can be antiseptic to anything that he does and not have to take that onto my own personal moral compass, because I can say, hey, I don't care about the guy. I just look at my policy. I don't care that he's a piece of crap. I don't care that he's a liar. I don't care that he's this, that, or the other. All I care about is what he's going to do with the policies, right? You guys are the ones who care about nice people who give bad policy, right? Like that's what they'll say. And that's what you're up against is Tarris is right to a degree. You got a lot of people out there who support Trump. They don't care about Epstein. They don't care about this other stuff because they have inoculated themselves to their morality and have convinced themselves that only policy matters.
And the funny thing about it is when you whittle it down, the real tie is not policy. It's all personal. They just say that because it sounds good. In actuality, the policy don't matter at all. We've seen Donald Trump go reverse his policy. I mean, this man has done more drone strikes already.
Well, maybe partisan is the word.
If you look at Trump's record, he's done more drone strikes to this point than Biden did in 4 years. He's actually ratcheted up the whole war machine, but yet he ran on no more wars. The policy really doesn't matter to MAGA. They like him. They like him. And I think all of us are like that. All of us vote for somebody. We want for somebody who we like and whose policies fit us. But likability goes a long way. And for whatever reason, Trump has a lot of likability among a lot of people. It's the truth.
But also, I feel like we're acting like this is not a direct reaction to the 8 years that we had the pleasure of having Barack Obama in office. Like, I know that we get into these very like nuanced conversations about policy and representation, all this stuff. But let's be real here. Big picture, the entire existence of a Trump administration is because people were so disturbed for having a black president elected twice back to back for 8 years straight that they were willing to vote for a guy who they don't necessarily like, whose policies are never consistent, but you represent the hatred in my heart that I had for 8 years straight. This is my get back. This is my chance to impose my revenge and my feelings of being disgruntled on the rest of the American people who did not vote the way that I wanted them to vote 10, 12 years ago. when y'all put that black man in office and that disturbed my entire hatred, bigoted soul. It's my turn now to make you feel the way I was feeling for those 8 years straight. That's what we're looking at. And for anybody who is still aligning themselves with Donald Trump and saying anything other than that, you're lying to yourself. You're lying to us and you're lying to yourself. And you need therapy.
So here's what Raven, I think you're right to a degree. Here's something I think that we're missing in what you said. Is that, look, let's not forget that Barack Obama won. You want to talk about mandates? I mean, Barack Obama won by a lot, and he won twice, and he had a pretty broad coalition of people who voted for him, right? And so I don't want people to think that like all of those people who voted for Barack Obama or that some of those people who voted for Barack Obama or a large portion of them shifted and now that they support Trump. I think what we forget, and I think J.D. Vance's book hit on this, and we forgot what he sort of uncovered why he came into popularity, is what Donald Trump did was he reached into the corners and the pocket of our country and found those people that you're talking about, Raven, the disaffected, disgruntled, racist, hateful people who most of the established Republicans have rejected and said, you're not part of. Again, you got to remember, Republicans now like to talk about Democrats as the elite. The Republicans used to be the country club elites of the country. That used to be who the Republican Party was until Donald Trump.
But it was all about optics. In my opinion, it was all about optics and what I could achieve.
Let me finish though. Ironically, Donald Trump, a country club elite himself, was able to convince some of these poor white folks who had not engaged in politics because they didn't see the Republicans like the dude who's the Speaker of the House and other folks and the Ted Cruz's of the world. They didn't see them as representatives of them, but somehow they saw Donald Trump that way. And he pulled all of these people out from under the corners who had never participated or hadn't in a while or had never participated. And that is the foundation of what MAGA is. Now, what you've got now are the Republicans who are not like Phil, who said, you know what, I'm out of here until the party that I remember comes back. What you have are unwilling hostages who have been forced into Republicans who have been forced to comply and go along with Donald Trump, or opportunists like J.D. Vance who saw where the tide was going and said, you know, I don't really believe this anyway, but for my own self-aggrandizement and chance to move forward, I'm going to go along with it. That is what you have in the MAGA movement and the Republican Party right now. And this is why I say that Tarris is so far gone with how he thinks that the Republicans can survive without MAGA, because he wants to believe under that delusion that there's a whole lot of Barack Obama people who are now part of the Republican Party. That is absolutely not true. Absolutely not true. What you have is MAGA, those folks that I said Donald Trump brought out, and then the Republican hostages and opportunists. You lose MAGA, there ain't enough of the Phil Hemlichs who, if they aren't done with the Republican Party, it's going to take a lot of work before Republicans like Phil Hemlich come back to that. And they cannot survive without the crazy. They can't. You can't win. And the fact that you think that the majority of Americans are with you. Now, they may be with you on some issues. Where I think the majority of Americans is they're with you on the border. They do. They want a secure border. They may not necessarily want you breaking up families and sending away folks, but they want a secure border. They want the criminals out. They also, as much as I say this is a small percentage of any real issue, but the transgender stuff resonates with them. More specifically, not the lifestyle, but this notion of quote unquote biological men participating in women's sports. There's probably broad agreement among Americans, whether they'll state it publicly or not, that are uncomfortable with that notion. And that resonates. Now, they don't care about, hey, transgender, you do you, live your life, but I want to make sure my daughter is competing against other biological women. Those are two issues where I think Donald Trump has seized on, and where I think Democrats out of a good place, they're reluctant to say what I just said, even if they agree with it. And I think they use those cultural things as wedge issues to get some people on their side. And I think but I don't think that more broadly, most Americans agree with a lot of what Republicans say.
Kevin, you said two things. You said the transgender thing, which is correct, and the immigration things. And I appreciate you for being open and being honest for the first time. I feel like on this show, it's an honesty right there. But you're failing to realize the cryptocurrency world. They just passed the Genius Act that is going to change our economy. Those people are gas prices going down, the oil is going down, the economy is booming, the Dow Jones in the stock market is a better time to invest now than any other time in American history. You are but as long as you guys stay in Trump drone syndrome, you guys are going to miss out on an economic boom. If you guys are investors, if you guys invest, Bill, I don't know if you invest or not, but are your economic people telling you that we're going toward a recession, or are we going toward an economic boom? Which way? And that's how American voters vote.
I'll tell you where
American voters vote.
Since you brought me into it, I'll tell you where we're going. I mean, first of all, we were headed toward major inflation even before this crazy bill they just passed. But you talk about the cherry on the sundae. I mean, they're adding another $4 trillion. We're going to be $40 trillion. This is going to be our national debt. Okay, do you know what happens when what happens to governments or people when that happens? They print money and they borrow money, which is we're now, the largest item, I believe, more than defense in our budget is just paying interest on the debt. And when on top of that, you add these tariffs, which basically increases the costs for everybody in this country. Okay, it isn't paid by those other countries. It's paid by people in this country. You do that, and I do read what a lot of economists say, and they all say we are looking at major inflation because, and as you may know, the dollar for the first time in years has now been dropping. It's losing its strength. Why? Because of not just the tariffs and the huge deficits, which the Trump folks just
passed. What about
the
Genius Act? What about the Genius Act?
That's the future.
The Genius Act that is going to back the cryptocurrency is going to be backed by the U.S. dollar, and the cryptocurrency is going to be on the gold standard. That's going to instantly change the market. You can trade. Come on, Phil. As much as you might hate Donald Trump, so we'll see. We will see. For people who invest in cryptocurrency, that big push of when you go to LA, crypto arena, and all these people, these big money people who are investing in cryptocurrency, if you're and you have an opportunity to get involved with that now because of the Genius Act that was passed in 3, where blockchain technology is going to start taking over. Blockchain technology is the next biggest thing in this world, especially with content creators like us. We could take our program, put it out, and we can see exactly where it goes, and it's going to handle disputes a lot faster. We're going to take the United States economy is going to go into an economic boom. In those things, are you guys still going to blame Donald Trump and look at all the things that you don't like about him instead of taking advantage of the things even in the democratic economic situation? You got to find the silver lining and find things that help you and your family instead of just blaming Donald Trump. This is an opportunity for us to do that.
He's going to be blamed.
What if he's a blame for the success? What if he's blamed for the success?
They've been piling up deficits for years. The only president in 30 years that actually was fiscally responsible
was Bill Clinton because for Ronald Reagan building up the military in the 80s and 84. So when Clinton got into
you don't know what.
So you're saying Ronald Reagan did not do BRAC realignment in 1980 when Ronald Reagan got into the White House? He did not build our military. It's to made it as strong as it was in 88. So Bill Clinton. Oh my.
That has nothing to
you
do
know
with
what? Hey, Tarris, you know what else Ronald Reagan did? You know what else Ronald Reagan did in 1986? You know what else Ronald Reagan did in 1986? He gave amnesty to undocumented people in the United States. That's what Ronald Reagan did.
He also killed the KKK. He did a lot of things. I was trying to talk on Phil's level because he said he's a Ronald Reagan Republican. So I was trying to say, hey, Phil, do you remember back in the 80s when Ronald Reagan took time to build into infrastructure in the United States military, which bolstered our military?
What does that have to do with what we're talking about? We're not talking about military strength.
The economy, because the military strength makes a better economy. In Ronald Reagan, I was trying to relate to you because a better economy.
Oh yeah, ask the Soviet Union about that. Ask the Soviet Union about that. But just so you know about not to just tie a little ribbon on Ronald Reagan, who I do admire in a number of ways, especially on foreign policy, because he actually stood up to dictators in the Soviet Union, unlike our current president. But let's not also forget that Ronald Reagan started this supply side economics BS. And he started the whole deficit thing. He started that. And then every president on both parties except Clinton has piled on the debt more and more. But if you guys don't mind, I got to jump off, but I do want to share one thing if you're okay with it. Because Nathan originally showed us the headline about Mike Johnson. Now, this is going to sound a little off track, but bear with me. There's a wonderful series called The Chosen. I think it's on Prime. It's about the life of Jesus. If you haven't seen it, you and your kids ought to watch every one. I watched it with my daughter, every single one of them. But there's some powerful segments where he looks at the religious leaders and he says, you are whitewashed tombs. You look good on the outside, but inside you're full of dead men's bones. And he's saying that to the religious leaders. And when I look at Mike Johnson, who, by the way, wears his faith on his sleeve, and you probably know he talks about how his son and they hold each other accountable. Like they look at each other's computer to make sure they're not watching any porn or anything. Well, I think that's great, weird. But at the same time, this is a guy. I'm fine with that accountability if it's across the board. But what about the fact that this guy just knocked 12 million people off of health care, which of course doesn't happen till after the election. And what about the fact that he, as I just mentioned before, massively increased our deficit and our borrowing and everything else, not to mention the fact that he, like Rob Horton, refuses to speak out against all the corruption in the Trump administration. So in my humble view, he's just like those Pharisees. He's like a whitewashed tomb that puts a good front on the outside, but inside, like Jesus said, he's full of dead men's bones. And
all right, appreciate it. We're all jumping off. With that, guys, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate you. No show on Friday. That's my wedding anniversary.
Congrats.
With the wife. Thank you. 25 years. So we'll be back next Tuesday and Friday, which will probably take us into August. So haven't looked at the calendar. Let me see real quick. Yeah, that takes us that's the last week of July. So have a great rest of your week, and I'll be with you next Tuesday.
All right. Happy anniversary, bro.
Oh, thank you so much.
Yes,
appreciate it.
See you guys.